Medicine Hat was a quiet suburban town in Alberta, Canada, where nothing ever happened.
It was a friendly place with a strong sense of community. It was picturesque and people looked out for each other.
The last thing you would have expected is a brutal murder to rock this town.
Hi guys, I'm Zainab.
And I'm Tara.
And welcome to our first ever Law and Disorder episode.
Oh my goodness, it's the very first one.
Yeah. So we started this podcast because we both have an interest in true crime.
Yeah, so I'm really interested in psychology. I hope to go on to psychology or brain sciences, like neuroscience in the future. So I think this really ties in with my interests.
And I am really interested in law. So I love looking at the legal outcome of like many true crime cases and cases in general. So it was perfect. Like we put our interests together and like combined it, and we thought this was like the perfect little thing and project for us to embark on.
Yeah, of course. So today we will be discussing the 2006 Richardson family murders.
So before we get into the case, we are just gonna give you guys a little overlay of how it goes. We're gonna talk about the case for a chunk at the beginning, and then we're gonna go off into our separate branches. Tara will discuss the psychology.
Yeah, so the criminal psychology aspect of like the murderer and of other elements that tie in.
And I'll obviously be discussing the legal outcomes and what actually happened in the trial. Yeah, so before we get into the case, there's just some trigger warnings you should be aware of.
Yeah, so this is quite a disturbing case. I mean, I'm sure a lot of the ones we cover will be, but just to preface, this is a quite disturbing case with heavy topics of violent descriptions of murder, childhood abuse, and suicide. So that's just in case anyone feels triggered about those sensitive subjects.
So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the background of this case.
All right, so some background of Medicine Hat. So the people who lived there were really proud of like the laid back and friendly vibe. Like parents were so comfortable. They were able to just let their kids outside and play in the like streets or wherever in the parks. And there was a good sense of trust between the neighbors. Like they would all have these family barbecues. They were all very close. It was a very sweet. It's like the typical suburban town that you see in like those American movies.
I know what you're
It's
saying.
like the picturesque American town. Yeah.
And it was like really beautiful as well. Like if you like open those like 50 movies, like Full House, it was like that kind of vibe. There was like clear skies, natural beauty. There was like lots of like valleys and hills and stuff.
Yeah, it was gorgeous.
Yeah, and it was like just perfect until 2006, where a tragedy completely shattered this image forever.
Yeah.
So let's get into. So now we know where this is set. By the way, this is in Canada.
Alberta, Canada.
Alberta, Canada.
So if anyone knows, that's like kind of like near the suburbs.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, like outskirts vibes.
Yeah. It's not like Toronto.
It's not like city
not like
vibes.
city vibes.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so we're gonna get into the family that we are gonna be looking at, which are the Richardsons. So, yeah, they were a typical suburban family. They were very happy and close initially, and they went on vacations together. They just loved being together, and they just were like the perfect little family of four.
Yeah, just perfect for years and years and years and years and years. Like Mark, the dad, he was a technician, so he was very successful. He loved to be the protector of the family. You know, like the typical dad figure.
Yeah.
Very protective, very like in charge. Just the dad.
Yeah.
And then Deborah, the mom, so she was a stay-at-home mom ever since Jasmine was born. She was warm and caring and was very trusting of her daughter. Her parents were actually quite like laid back. Jasmine's parents.
Yeah.
They weren't the kind of like helicopter parents. They were just like, you go on, we trust you to make the right choices, go on.
Yeah, well, initially.
Initially,
we'll get into what happens later with Jasmine. However, a point you guys should know is it's something very interesting that me and
I found this
found
really
out
interesting actually. Like we
in
did
our
not know
research,
this before we started looking into the case.
Yeah, so Mark and Deborah, the way they actually met is that they both were extremely severe like druggies. Like they had really heavy addictions and they're like full on alcoholics, hard drugs, everything. And there are actually reports, okay, we're not saying this is 100% true.
Yeah, it's just speculated
that they both met in an addiction recovery support group, and they like overcame their addictions together by staying like sober together, and they like kind of were supporting each other. They were like, listen, we're never gonna, like, if we have a family together, we're gonna, like, keep a promise to, like, stay sober.
And they stuck to that promise. Like, they never had any alcohol in their home. They were so against, like, drugs and anything to do with that. They really were very struck on that as, like, a family with their morals. I think that's really sweet.
That's so sweet. That's like,
really sweet.
Imagine, like, your soulmate being someone, like, you both help each other out of such a dark
You guys are
place.
going through the darkest point in your life, and you find someone, and you stick by them. That is so sweet.
That's perfect.
And it's, like, it must be such a nice household to grow up in. Like, having your parents be so supportive of each other.
And, like,
and having these strict, like, values.
Of, like, of, like, morals and, like, ethics and stuff.
Exactly. And I think, like, it's, you, like, think, like, oh, my parents don't know anything. They just don't want me to, like, make bad choices. Like, but they know everything. They've been through it all.
Yeah. So 100%. And, as well as, like, Mark and Deborah, obviously the parents, there was also 2 key children that we need to look at. So, Jacob, he was Jasmine's younger brother. So, Jasmine was the older sister, and she's, like, the main pivotal person in this case, which we will go into heavily after this. But Jacob was Jasmine's younger brother. He was around, like, 4 years younger than her. And he was very sweet, very playful. He was, like, the baby of the family. He loved his family. But one very important thing is that he idolized his sister. Like, he loved her so much, and he wanted to be, like, exactly like her. Like, he just always wanted to spend time with her.
He really looked up to her.
Yeah, wanted to be exactly like her.
She was the example of who he wanted to be when he was older. And I think that's so sweet.
So sweet. And okay, Jasmine,
just like before
before full stop. At the start, like before she entered her like teen era, like before she entered
when
her
she was
pre-teen,
like maybe like 10 or 11,
early 11, yeah,
like before she turned 12.
Yeah,
she her friends were like describing her as nice. She was friendly, she had great grades, she was on the swim team, she was really interested in arts. And she got along with everyone. Yeah,
like her family loved her. Like she was like this like perfect older daughter. She was very nice to her brother, very open.
Got along with everyone, like great student.
Perfect,
like
literally.
Perfect life.
It was
honestly.
An amazing family. However, these perfect suburban family dynamics started to change when Jasmine entered her preteen era. So when she started to turn around like 12.
Yeah. 12 years old.
12. Oh, I remember when I was 12. That was not a good time.
2006 was a different time.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go into how she changed.
When Jasmine turned 12, she did a full 180. She started to lose interest in everything. She became friends with a different group of kids, group that she met in the mall, the alternative kids. So those are like people interested in gothic subculture.
Yeah.
She identified with everything that came with this group and this subculture.
Yeah.
They all shared mental health issues quite openly, and she kind of gravitated towards that group, like, naturally.
Yeah, she felt like she belonged to them.
Like, she started to model her appearance on her friends, and as this physical change happened, her personality also shifted. She was no longer the same outgoing, bubbly, bright girl, and was a lot more quiet and reserved, and kind of dark and glaring.
Yeah.
Which was kind of, like, the stylistic choice to like, change the energy.
So she kind of just, like, and like what we would call it, like she became more emo.
Maybe not emo, just a bit more alternative.
Yeah, more alternative. She like when we say she changed her appearance, like she started like wearing darker makeup, more like darker clothes, like maybe her hair was like always straight and like in front of her face. Yeah, very moody.
She's like more reserved with her like attitude.
Very quiet. And you know how like teenagers will go through that like dark and mysterious era where they'll be very like moody,
very
and, like,
closed off,
very
like
off and
emotional.
Yeah.
That was kind of how Jasmine was feeling. Yeah. However, like, I think she was a bit early to enter this phase. But I mean, I guess you can enter at any stage. But I think at 12 years old, you, like, as a parent, you'd be quite concerned having your 12-year-old start hanging out the mall all the time and start dressing like this.
Especially something we found, which is really important, is, like, most of these kids that she was hanging around with were much older. Like, they were, like, 17, 18 years old. And imagine, like, a group of 17, 18-year-olds at the mall hanging around, listening to, like, dark music, dark outfits, and there's just, like, a 12-year-old girl who's, like, completely pulled into that. Like, I don't know, it feels a bit weird.
I feel unsettled thinking about it. Like, she was into a lot of rock bands and, like, underground rock concerts.
Because of these friends.
Yeah, so, like, she would listen to the Misfits, Slipknot, and the thing is, these bands, or maybe not these bands specifically, but like she would go to these concerts,
Like rock concerts.
concerts
with these friends that she met
Yeah.
at the mall.
and they would have these really small basement shows with weird older men.
So
It was kind of shady.
yeah, it's like not the environment you'd expect. Like
A
imagine
12-year-old girl.
a 12-year-old girl, like that just makes me really like uncomfortable, because these are like shady basement rock concerts where like you'd expect like older teenagers, like 18-year-olds, and like older men, like 30s, 40s.
Like they would be in like basements, they'd be in like these abandoned like areas.
Yeah.
It's just a very weird scene
For
for
a
a 12-year-old
12-year-old.
girl. Yeah.
Exactly. And like, so that's like at these, oh dear, now we go into it.
I think just like the entire thing made her feel very grown up.
Yeah.
Like it's an adult scene at the end of the day. Fine, like maybe
she felt
late
very like
teenager.
cool.
But you're
Yeah.
12. You're not even a teenager properly. You should
Yeah.
not have been in this adult scene at such a young age.
I guess like it kind of made her feel like she was very mature and like
Yeah, put her in power. Made her feel like she was
made
empowered.
her feel better.
Mm-hmm.
But also like so many negatives came from this, and this is like the most main negative that happened. Like a man, as we mentioned already, like you meet very older men at these like shady basement shows, and that's actually how she met this man, this fully grown 23-year-old man
That is outrageous.
named Jeremy Allen Steinke.
Jeremy Allen Steinke.
Yeah.
He's a very important figure in this case as well.
The main, yeah, basically.
Yeah, so they
Yeah.
met at a show and he thought she was beautiful. She did not look 12. I've seen photos. She did not look 12. Like if you go to like the mall and you see a 12-year-old, or if you go to school you see a year 7,
Yeah.
that is not how she looked. But as a 23-year-old man, I think you could tell this girl was not an adult. Maybe
Yeah.
like 15, 16. Still, not justified at all.
clearly not.
You're
like,
23 years old.
yeah, she did not.
That is crazy.
She did dress like a much like more older for her age, but she did not look, guys, she did not look like an adult. She looked like maybe a 15, 16-year-old at most.
Max.
But that's still wrong. Like as a 23-year-old going to this 15-year-old that who's actually 12, but you think is 15, and being like
Either way, regardless of what she looks, of what you think,
and being
it's
like,
a messed up
hi,
situation.
like I think you're beautiful. Like that is, and then he approaches her, okay, and then he starts flirting with her, and obviously Jasmine, we know, like likes this kind of attention because she feels very grown up. So she doesn't know better. She's 12. She starts flirting back, and by the end of the night, this man asks her out, and she agrees.
Okay, so
Oh,
let's
dear.
just put this on paper. 23-year-old man sees this very young-looking girl and asks her out on a date, thinks she's beautiful, and she says yes.
Oh dear.
The first time they meet. Okay, and then as time goes on, they met
keep
up a few
meeting.
more times.
They
Yeah.
keep meeting, guys, and like at this point, he has to know. Like, be so for real. He has to know. Okay, you've met this girl like 6-7 times now. It's not like in the basement anymore. Like you guys have maybe met like somewhere else. It's not always that dark underground.
Yeah, maybe
setting.
they met at like the mall.
Yeah.
They went to like the movies.
Exactly. Maybe it's like brighter. He must have known she was 12
knew.
then.
Maybe she did not outright tell him, but
he
she was
knew.
not an adult.
And he knew she was
He
not an
knew
adult.
she was not an adult.
100%.
So
He
they
he
met up
definitely
a
knew.
few more times until they were an official couple. And
Guys, remember, 12
and 23.
Like, that makes me
11-year-old age gap.
that makes me want to throw up. And I think the thing that's even worse is that this was a sexual relationship. A sexual relationship.
There is a 23-year-old man having sexual relations with a 12-year-old girl.
Like, that makes me sick. Literally sick.
Yes, like, okay, I understand Jasmine is 12. She does not, she must understand to an extent that this is wrong, but with the kind of people she's hanging out with, they all are older than her.
Yeah.
Her boyfriend is very influential over her life and her choices, which I'll get into later with the psychology part.
Yeah.
But she must have had some kind of power or some voice in her head telling her this was okay to an extent. That makes Jeremy pretty much
grooming
almost
her.
completely
He was
responsible.
100% just like grooming her.
This is child grooming.
Yeah.
This is pedophilia.
Literally.
This is
It's
very
so
disturbing.
wrong. She's 12. Like, she doesn't know any better. Like, at that age, like so much, like you're changing puberty.
Yeah, I mean that's very influential part of a child's life. Like that's where you're the most influenced. Because
like,
that's when you start adopting the same beliefs and like ideas as other people around you.
100%.
So like, okay, let's get into Jeremy's character.
Yeah, so we know like a bit about Jasmine, where she's come from, what's happened so far. Let's look a bit into Jeremy Stanky now.
Yeah, okay, so he was part of the main friend group that Jasmine was part of. He was everything boys her age were not.
Yes.
He was mature, he was older, he showed dominance in the friend group and was one of the main people. He was hard to ignore.
He was like the popular one in the group, like all the girls liked him. And by the way, this is the alternative group, okay? We're talking about the mall group. So obviously Jasmine's like attracted to him. And the fact that like he showed interest back, like she must have felt so on top of the world.
Especially because like, sorry, you continue.
Yeah, even though it's like sick, she must have felt so like
exactly. Yeah. Like because everyone in the friend group was very worried about what Jeremy thought. He was the figure. He was the person you needed to know.
100%.
He was the person that like you craved validation from. Yeah. He had quite an authoritarian personality, which I'll get into later with the psychology, but he was the person whose validation you sought.
So guys, one important thing to know about Jeremy is that he has a history of dating much younger girls. So this grown man, like even when he's in his 20s, 21, 22, he's had a history of dating teenage girls. Guys, teenage girls. And this girl, Jasmine, she's not even a teenager yet. Yeah. So just put that into perspective. Is that not weird? That
we don't know how low he's gone, but there are speculations Jasmine is the youngest girl he's dated.
Yeah, and that's like so... It's just like
it's disgusting. You're 23 years old. Why are you dating teenage girls?
And that's so like sick. Like knowing your boyfriend like dates younger girls. Like you have to like that. At that
what
point,
kind of like comfort do you get from that?
He doesn't like her. He likes her age. He likes
the idea of having that much power over such a young, influential person who will 100%. Never stand up for themselves.
Exactly.
He likes having complete control. That's why he was the main figure of this very strange friend group.
Yeah. So like at the point where Jasmine met him when he was 23, he was unemployed, he was a high school dropout, and he was a hard druggie. Like he wasn't fully addicted, but he wasn't like sober. Like he used to do them and like dabble in them a lot.
Yeah, he just like lived with his mom in a trailer park, which is a few miles away from where Jasmine lived. Yeah. His mother was a severe alcoholic.
Let's like go into his like backstory now.
Oh, backstory.
Like this was like how he was right now.
Yeah.
We need to go into how he grew up, like his
childhood. Because this is actually quite important to the character of Jeremy. So, his mother was a severe alcoholic throughout his life. Even when she was pregnant with him, there was speculated that she was drinking while she was pregnant with him. So, that means that, this is all very speculated. There are no, like, reports of this. It's not diagnosed. Yeah. But he could have been born with fetal alcohol syndrome.
Yeah, so some people believe that, but it's not diagnosed.
That is purely just people on the internet going, it looks like he has this, but yeah.
Which is, kind of. But so we do know that his mother was a severe alcoholic throughout his life, and his father, horrendously abusive. Both to him and his mother, although it was mainly towards his mother. So people say this is like one of the reasons his mom was such an alcoholic was because she did this to like deal with the abuse she faced from her husband, which is obviously a terrible household to grow up in. That is
so destructive.
Yeah, and like an abusive dad and like an alcoholic mother who also is getting abused, and like even after like the father, like the mother and father separated.
Yeah, so Jeremy's father like left his life.
Yeah,
and he was no longer involved. But even after that, his mom dated abusive alcoholics.
Yeah, and she brought like terrible men around Jeremy, like throughout
at a very young age as well.
Yeah, and this is like, imagine like growing up and like seeing your father left, your father hit your mom,
your father hit you,
then your
mom would drink,
and your mom like drinks and neglects you, and then she starts dating again, and then she brings back more abusive men. Like that would make
it's a very destructive pattern for a young child to be growing up
especially because you don't have like a healthy father figure, right?
Yeah, I think like having strong parental figures really like it's something required for a child to grow up.
Not having like a strong, especially for Jeremy because he is a guy, like not having that guy guidance growing up, like
the male guidance, you kind of seek that in your life.
You kind of never understand like the difference between right and wrong almost.
But
know?
that we'll tie
We'll
back
go
into
into that,
the
yeah.
psychology.
So we know he had like no love or support growing up. At around 13, Jeremy started feeling very depressed and very anxious, and this is the age that he started to self-harm. Yeah, and around this time he was also diagnosed with ADHD, and he also started smoking weed every single day. Every single day, this child, okay, he's 13.
13-year-old boy.
Every day from the age of 13,
Undeveloped
he's drinking weed.
brain.
Every day. Smoking, sorry. Not drinking. 13 to 23, he every day has been smoking weed. And that's when your brain develops. Exactly.
This
and
is not
like,
okay.
It's very, like, we don't, like, know this, like, effects completely.
This is not understood. This is I understood to a very small extent.
But we do know that this does have an effect. And
on, like, the psyche.
This is one of the problems that he was the way he was. Maybe this is one of the reasons.
Yeah.
So when he entered high school, he became very punk and very like he was like Jasmine was more like gothy and he became
just
more
alternative gothic because it's like 2006, like
yeah.
you know, like the scene subcultures.
Scene kind of like the Justin Bieber emo haircut, like dark.
Yeah, the scene hair. It was like she wasn't punk. She wasn't as like.
She wasn't like she was just more like moody. But Jeremy was like full on punk, like spiky hair, like
emo.
That kind of like. Okay, guys, you're gonna laugh when you hear this, but at some point when he entered high school, he started wearing a vial of blood around his neck.
Was it his blood? Was it Jasmine's blood? Was it his friend's blood?
Well, he didn't know Jasmine at this time.
Oh, so yeah, because he was in high school and he's 23 years old when he meets her. That is outrageous.
We don't really know whose blood it is. It could have been fake. He was just trying to get attention. But
no, I don't know.
He told everyone, guys, look, I have a vial of blood around me. Because, you want to know why, guys? You want to know why this guy had to carry blood around him at all times? He genuinely believed that he was a 300-year-old werewolf and therefore needed blood to survive.
That is crazy. And the thing is, you might think, oh, it's a 13-year-old boy, doesn't know what he's saying. This little act of his continued until he was 23.
Yeah.
I don't think there was ever a point where he stopped thinking this.
Like, imagine being a 23-year-old and genuinely believing you were a 300-year-old
23-year-old, literally, you live with your mom in a trailer park, and you're going around telling 12-year-old girls, I'm a werewolf.
I'm gonna wolf out on the full moon. Beware.
Yeah, literally, I'm a werewolf, and I need your blood to survive. Do you want to be my girlfriend, little girl?
Weird.
It's very...
Yeah,
very
so
absurd.
He literally, even when he met Jasmine, he literally said, hi, I'm a 300-year-old werewolf, which doesn't that make the age gap worse?
Yeah, because that's like a 2,000, 800 and... Wait, no, it's like a 280, 88-year-old age gap. Oh my god.
He knows she's a child, he knows she's 12, and he genuinely believes he's a 300-year-old. So guys, isn't this 10,000 times worse?
Literally, because of his weird demeanor, a lot of kids at school bullied him. Because, rightfully so, I fear, but, also, I do empathize. I really do empathize, because he's had a really troubled life.
Yeah.
But, you can't expect people to, at school to gas you up for thinking you're a werewolf.
The only friend group that really accepted him, which was, these were, his mall friends, but these didn't come in high school. These came in his 20s, later.
And they were high school kids.
Yeah, and the people that bullied him, this was throughout high school, so he never really throughout his life he was very lonely because people didn't he didn't have a parent. He didn't have parents basically. He didn't even have friends growing up. He got bullied so bad to the point where it was little things as well. It was hitting as well, but it was little things just verbal abuse. People would call him Stinky instead of Steinky. They'd play on his name and just imagine living in such a toxic household.
It is a very horrible life to experience. Regardless of who you are, regardless of what it led to, you have to I do empathize.
Yeah,
I do feel very sorry
such a bad
for him.
Home life, and you're going to school expecting to feel less alone and finding friends and feeling better, and then they single you out too. I can't imagine how lonely he must have felt throughout his life.
And that's what led him to kind of never grow up, essentially.
Yeah, some people feel because of this kind of mindset, he never really understood the morals of like right and wrong, and he never like that's no excuse. As a 23
Of course, you are still fully accountable for what you do. You were the only person to blame in this because you did take advantage of a 12-year-old girl at the age of 23.
However, at this point, when he's in high school, the bullying got so bad to a point where he tried to hang himself, and he did survive the suicide attempt. I think he did like get some therapy after this, but like it wasn't enough, you know, like he still was badly damaged, like bad childhood, bad school life, weed, drugs, alcohol, like neglect, like even when he was 23, he was immature. He never really grew up, and his mindset stayed of that as a teenager.
He kind of wanted to live the life that he dreamt of when he was a teenager.
Yeah, which is why so many believe he like hung out with younger kids and like became like the dominant figure because he like felt in control for once.
Yeah, because he kind of lacked that throughout his life. But again, we'll go into that. We'll go into that.
No excuses, though.
Guys. Absolutely no excuse. This man is fully accountable. What he did was absolutely disgusting.
100%.
And he is the only one to blame for this.
So
but
now
I think it is important to acknowledge the backstory of Jeremy.
We do now. We know like a little bit about the kind of man Jeremy was. Let's go back to his. Do I really want to go to his and Jasmine?
It's a bit.
It's a bit sick, guys.
It's a bit disgusting.
Sick.
Yeah, you will probably feel very uncomfortable. So this is like where a lot of our sexual topics come in.
And we're gonna talk about how this relationship between him and Jasmine ruined Jasmine's relationship with her family, if that makes sense.
Which ultimately led to the murders. But let's continue. So at first, it was more of an online relationship. Jeremy helped her get into the darker aesthetic and set up more gothic posts on her MySpace.
Yeah, he would like give her advice. He'd be like,
yeah,
babe, you look like really good in the sick. He'd be like, babe, you look really good. Maybe like wear darker eyeliner. Like it was super like helping her be more alternative.
Yeah, it was just like
it was more like an online texting kind of thing.
Yeah, they were very online at first. But
guys, this was the MySpace era. Like this was 2000s. Like they were like computers, chat. It was like
they were like
calls.
Computers.
Like they were like, you know how they were like chat on the website on the computer. Like it wasn't like very face.
You couldn't like text and stuff.
Yeah, it was like you could, but like it wasn't like as efficient.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And then so along with this darker aesthetic that Jeremy helped Jasmine get into, he also like kind of influenced her, and she got influenced herself as well to wear
because
more
like she's 12
clothes.
Years old. That's a very like I said, very influence based decisions that she makes at this age.
So she started wearing way more revealing clothes, and remember, this girl is 12. So her parents, obviously, imagine seeing your bubbly girl who's very like loud and like friendly going to like revealing clothes, dark, moody. So obviously this like whole new version of their daughter, they knew like something. It had to be more than her just hanging out with these like alternative kids at the mall. Like there had to be more. And then that's when they found out about Jeremy Steinke.
And they were horrified. Like they weren't angry at their daughter because of course they understood like my daughter's a victim here. My daughter's being groomed. And they were very supportive parents. Like she could not have been luckier. So they did not punish her at first. They were just really angry at Jeremy. And therefore, as any logical parent would do, they banned Jasmine from seeing him, calling him, texting him, or anything. However, Jasmine felt like her parents were punishing her because she thought that she was in love.
Remember, she's like 12 at this point. Like, do you like remember when your parents like take your phone away? You feel like it's the end of the world. They hate you. They're not doing it for your best. But this is like an entirely different situation. Her parents weren't punishing Jasmine. They were protecting her. Like, this man is grooming their daughter. Obviously, they're gonna protect her. This man is disgusting. They're gonna stop her from seeing him because this is a very disgusting relationship. However, obviously, Jasmine is just 12. She doesn't know this. She's in her angsty, oh my god, it's the end of the world, like, preteen phase. Yeah. And she thought, like, her parents were just doing this for, like, out of spite. Like, they just did not want their daughter to be happy. They just hated her, so they were punishing her. And she was like, how can you do this to me? I'm in love with him. And it's just, like, very unfortunate that it had to be this way. So because of this, because she did not agree with her parents and genuinely thought that there was nothing wrong with it, she started to rebel, and she started to find ways that she could still talk to Jeremy. Like she texted him from different accounts. However, when her parents found out about this, they came down even harder.
I mean, like, they took away her phone, her laptop, tried to cut off the internet access. They also stopped her from going to these rock concerts, which she should have never been at anyway.
Yeah, but like for Jasmine, like that was like the main way she like met her friends, and like that was like her
Yeah,
enjoyment.
of course.
And she loved these rock concerts. So she was like obviously like distraught, right? Because she can't contact anyone. She like she can't contact her friends.
She felt cut off from the world,
yeah,
basically.
she felt like they just like ruined her, and obviously this drew such a huge wedge in the family.
Of course.
Because parents were obviously just trying to protect their daughter, and Jasmine was obviously just like feeling like they hated her and like were punishing her.
After all of this, though, Jeremy and Jasmine found a way to communicate without the parents knowing.
Oh dear.
And this website was, are you ready for it?
No, I'm not.
Vampirefreaks.com.
Vampirefreaks.com. Okay, we know that they're like edgy and all, but like, isn't that
This is a bit far.
a tad bit
Actually, if
excessive?
you do look up vampirefreaks.com, don't ask why I googled it. I was a bit curious about what it was because I saw this when reviewing the case, and I was very curious. It's just like a clothing website now because the website got shut down for having controversial posts. So and of course, as part of this murder case, they did have to kind of shut it down.
Yeah.
So now it's a website for clothes. So it was a website initially for people like Jeremy who thought they were mystical creatures like vampires or werewolves, and you could privately message each other on vampirefreaks.com. So Jeremy's account was called Soul Eater, of course.
And Jasmine's account was called Runaway Devil.
That's actually the name of the book, I think, that is written about the Richardson murders.
Yeah.
It's really good book.
Okay, so on this website, on vampirefreaks.com, Soul Eater and Runaway Devil started to plan how they would next meet. But I mean, it was very hard. Jasmine's parents had totally cracked down on her. Like, they were
Understandably.
they were not letting her out of her sight. There was the point where they walked her to school and picked her up. They didn't like let her go to these rock concerts, and if they did, they would chaperone. And obviously, like, they were just like,
Understandably, that is a 12-year-old child.
Exactly, but like also like it was super hard. Like, they were on her case. So like, how were they gonna meet?
So of course, Jasmine and Jeremy, feeling like the victims of this, both felt like Jasmine's parents were being totally unfair and restrictive, and then they started posting some disturbing stuff. So let's just look at this post that was on the website. This is from Soul Eater, which is Jeremy.
He wrote a 15-line poem on Soul Eater's account.
It starts with, "My girlfriend's family are totally unfair. She continues to think that I came / into her life to help her out. Their throats I want to slit."
Around the same time, so this is what Jeremy wrote, okay, on the website. And around the same time, Runaway Devil responded to Soul Eater. So Jasmine responded to Jeremy and said, "Rar, I hate them. So I have this plan. It begins with me killing them, and it ends with me living with you."
And the next day, Soul Eater replied, "Well, I love your plan, but we need to get a bit more creative with the details and stuff."
Whoa.
Exclamation mark.
Whoa. Okay, so now we have Jasmine and Jeremy have just basically felt like the parents are punishing them, and on this vampirefreaks.com, they basically admitted their plans to
Receipts
killing.
have been made.
Receipts have been made, guys. They want to kill Jasmine's parents. That is so sick.
That is absurd.
So now we're gonna go into the actual case, guys. This is important. This is what happened the day off.
So on April 23rd, 2006, it was a lovely day outside, bright and sunny. Jacob's best friend, Gareth, lives in the neighborhood. And this day, he wanted to go call Jacob to play.
So you guys remember Jacob, right? Jasmine's younger brother, Jacob.
The one who idolized her.
Yeah, so in their neighborhood, he had a best friend, and this best friend was Gareth. They were like the same age. They both used to play together all the time. They used to just go to each other's houses, knock on the door like, "Hi, Jacob, you want to come play? Gareth, you want to come play?" So that is exactly what Gareth did on this day, because he saw that the dad, Mark, his truck was in the driveway. So Gareth took this as a sign that Jacob was home and wanted to play. So he went to their house and knocked on the door.
And he waited,
but
and
nobody
answered. He knocked again, and nobody came. So he tried to look through the windows, and he was like a very small boy. Like, the closest window was the basement window, which is like just about ground level. He crouched down, looked through it, and saw something horrifying.
He sees Jacob and Jasmine's mom, Deborah Richardson, covered in blood, laying down on the ground of the basement, a lifeless body.
This poor 8-year-old has discovered the crime scene. He came screaming to his mum, told her everything, took his mum to look and crouch down, and she saw it too. He was right. So the mum panics and ran her son into the minivan and just hid him in there. Because she was petrified. There's a killer on the loose in this perfect suburban town. Everyone is so, close, very strong sense of community, absolutely gorgeous scenery. Nothing could have ever shaken this perfect image. And there's a killer on the loose who has just killed Deborah.
So, obviously Garrett's mom calls the police, and the police were straight to the scene by 1 p.m. They kick the doors down to the house, and that's where they find all of the Richardson family, but one, dead. The only one missing was Jasmine.
Jasmine Richardson was nowhere to be found. So the mother, the one they could see, was viciously stabbed all over her body. Her father was in the same room, but closer to the stairs, but also viciously stabbed.
Upstairs in the bedroom was poor Jacob's body. He was laying in his bed with toys around him and a lightsaber still clutched in his hand with his throat slashed.
Now, let's get into exactly what happened.
It's the early hours of the morning on the 23rd of April, and Jeremy Steinke leaves his house dressed in all black.
He was dressed this way purposefully to not be seen, but of course, as an alternative person, he always would wear black. And this day, he drank a lot of alcohol. He was never fully sober. I mean, everyone said that there was a trend that you would never see Jeremy sober. However, today he drank a lot of alcohol and had many kinds, so spirits and wine, and they say he mixed a cocktail of drugs. So there was a whole gram of cocaine, ecstasy, and lots of weed.
So obviously he's intoxicated. He is not in the right mind. And Jeremy Sankey walks all the way to Jasmine's house. Drunk, intoxicated, not in the right mind. So Jasmine had left the basement window open for Jeremy. And he was so drunk that he was stumbling and crashing and falling into the basement and making lots of noise.
And of course, this woke up her parents. So they heard movement from downstairs and were curious. And Jeremy and Jasmine knew, as soon as they heard the parents awake, that this was their time to kill them now.
So Jeremy, in the basement now, he whipped out his ski mask, put it on, and hid in the shadows of the basement. He waited, isolated from the basement was isolated from the rest of the house, and he waited until anyone came down to investigate.
So Deborah was the first one to come down, and Jeremy frenzy stabbed her. She screamed the whole time and woke up the entire family, and there are reports that Jeremy stabbed her 12 times, with the last one being a 12-centimeter deep wound through her heart, which killed her.
So because the mom was obviously screaming so much because she was being murdered, Jeremy and Jasmine knew that the rest of the house was now awake. So before Mark had come downstairs, guys, by the way, Jasmine is downstairs at this point. So before Mark had come downstairs, Jasmine runs upstairs really quickly to try and distract Jacob, to stop him from coming downstairs.
So this is where a lot of graphic imagery comes in, so just trigger warning. Mark got a screwdriver from the kitchen before he went to the basement, and that's where he saw his wife's bloody body. So Jeremy jumped at him. He turned around and tried to run up, but Jeremy was too fast, grabbed him, stabbed him in the back, threw him down the stairs, and he fell all the way down to the bottom. Jeremy tried to continue to attack, but Mark fought back. He was the protector of the family overall, and at the end of the day, he is a very strong man, and he fought back viciously. But this did not faze Jeremy. He was so drunk that he didn't feel any pain. He was so numb to it all. He very hazed, and he just was not put off by it at all. He frenzy stabbed him in the chest and the abdomen. But during the attack, Mark just asked him, why? And Jeremy said, 'cause you treat your daughter like bleep, and this is what she wanted.
So guys, he has brutally murdered Mark.
The last thing you see as a father, a very supportive father, you've done everything you could to give your children the best life. The last thing you hear is, you treat your daughter like bleep, and this is what she wanted. That would break my heart,
That would break
honestly.
my heart.
That would, like, in the last
It's
moments
so
of
sad.
life,
Yeah.
you're told by this man who is stabbing you to death that you treated your daughter like bleep.
So guys, this may be the hardest part of the entire case, so bear with us.
This is the most
very
this
emotional.
part disturbed me the most.
100%. So now Jeremy has killed both Deborah and both Mark. He walks upstairs with a bloody knife in his hand, blood dripping all the way up the stairs. He walks into Jacob's room because he knows Jasmine and Jacob are there. He hands Jasmine the knife. Jasmine knows that her parents are dead. She doesn't seem to care. Jeremy pins down Jacob. Poor baby Jacob. He's not stupid, guys. He knows
He's a
what
child,
has
but
happened.
he's not stupid.
He knows
He
what has
understands that his parents have just been killed. He heard their screams.
happened. Yeah.
He can see his parents' blood all over Jeremy right now.
So obviously
He
this,
understands.
this child, he starts pleading for his life. He's pleading his sister for his life. Like, how sick is that? How sad is that? You have to beg your sister to let you live.
Like,
Some
8-year-old
people-
boy is pleading for his life.
And some people actually believe that he tried to fight Jeremy and Jasmine off with a lightsaber toy that he had, which is why he was found with it
Holding
clutching to
it.
his chest.
Yeah.
So Jasmine grabs the knife from Jeremy and plunges it into Jacob's chest. He then starts making a gurgling sound, and Jasmine freaks out and hesitates. So Jeremy finishes the job by slashing the poor baby's throat. Absolutely devastating. Absolutely sick. Jasmine and Jeremy have successfully killed her own family. She's killed her own family, her own baby brother
Who
did
idolized her.
nothing. He wanted to be like her, and he died knowing his sister. Imagine how scared he must have been. How terrified everyone in that family must have been. Jeremy and Jasmine left the house thinking they got away with murder. But did they?
Did they really?
I am now going to go into the law part because, as you guys know, I'm very interested in law. I love looking at trials and cases, and I'm going to be using some legal terminology. I'm also going to be talking about how they got caught and the legal proceedings. So, how were they caught? As we know, on April 23rd, the police found the bodies of Mark, Deborah, and Jacob after Gareth and the mom saw them in the window. So the initial investigation, they found how there was no sign of forced entry because Jasmine had left the door open for Jeremy. So obviously the police were suspicious. They thought, hold on, there must be some involvement from someone known to the family if there was no signs of forced entry. So, as they see, Jasmine is initially feared to be missing because she's not there. They think it's a family of 3. However, when they find out that they had a daughter too through family photos, they realize the daughter is missing. At first, they were like, oh my god, is she kidnapped? Is she abducted? But quickly, she became a suspect. So, investigators looked online and they found the incriminating online messages between Stanky and Jasmine.
On Vampire Freaks.
And on private chat as well, discussing the murders. As well as that, they also had a public tip because Stanky had bragged about the killings to his friends, which also led a tip-off to the police. So, the police were able to locate them and arrested them just 24 hours later. So, what were the legal proceedings? Jasmine Richardson was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder under the Youth Criminal Justice Act. So guys, the YCJA, Youth Criminal Justice Act, it protects minors from adult sentences and it focuses more on rehabilitation. So basically, it focuses on getting them better, making them a better person, and it doesn't believe in children being being treated like adult cases. What Jasmine did was terrible, but under this Youth Criminal Justice Act, she was not charged as an adult. However, Stanky was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder under adult criminal law because he is a 23-year-old. He should know what is right and wrong. So Jasmine's trial was in 2007, and it was under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, and it prioritized making her better and retribution for minors. So what was the verdict for Jasmine? She was guilty on all 3 counts, and she was sentenced to the maximum allowed under this act, which is only 10 years. And that includes 4 years in a psychiatric facility and community supervision. So, 10 years, the maximum she can get under this act, she got. 4 years in a psychiatric facility and also community supervision, and then the rest normal rehabilitation. Guys, that means she'd be out by the time she's 22.
That's not even Jeremy's age.
Exactly. So under this act, minors cannot receive life sentences, and her sentence was mostly just to make her better. However, Stanky was tried as an adult, as he should, and it was relied on like digital evidence on vampire freaks, his confession, testimony. So the defense tried to use a strategy where they were like, oh, he has diminished capacity. Diminished capacity is like he's like not in the right mind. It's a defense claim, which means that there's reduced responsibility due to mental impairment. So they're saying like, oh, they have mental issues. This like he doesn't have the diminished capacity to commit this murder, right? However, it was rejected by the jury. They believe that no, he doesn't have any mental problems. He was completely in the right state of mind. He should have not done this. And Jeremy Steinke was found guilty of all 3 counts and was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole for 25 years. So this is the maximum law under Canadian for this offense. So they both got the maximum numbers that they could under the acts and laws and jury they were. Mm-hmm. So currently, what's happened? Jasmine Richardson was released in 2016. She's been given a whole new identity, and it kind of focuses on like how the YCJA wants to protect minors and like gives them like a whole new identity. So she's free today, guys. She's free. She probably has a family. She has a whole new name, a whole new life, while she took the life of her parents and her brother. Mm-hmm. You can argue that she was groomed, but to what extent is murder okay?
To what extent will that really be an excuse for their actions?
Exactly. And Jeremy Steinke is still incarcerated, and he's serving a life sentence with no parole until 2033. So, I already said, the key legal terms, the YCJA, diminished capacity, life without parole. So that means that in common cases for murder for adults, especially when there's like aggravating factors, there's like you're eligible for parole somehow. And this case kind of demonstrates, especially like the law trial, it demonstrates the contrast in the sentencing for minors versus adults under the Canadian legal system. Like you can see that in the harshness of the verdicts for Jeremy and Jasmine. And it shows how like they also balance public safety, rehabilitation, and proportionality.
Alright, so now I will be talking about the criminal psychology aspect of this. And I will really only be commenting on Jeremy's psychology, just because I do not really have much to comment on Jasmine. Like, I do think that the main motive and the main psychology aspect to this was that she was a young girl. She was 12 years old, who was in a very influential state of mind, like, at such a young age, which caused her to be very easily influenced by those around her and by such an authority figure in her life, which was her boyfriend. And that did lead her to commit such a heinous act. So, of course, no excuses, but I do think that was the motive behind it. So, Jeremy grew up in a very messed up household. I think we did comment on that before. But his mother was a severe alcoholic as a result of her husband's abuse, and his father was extremely abusive towards him and his wife. So, the mother admitted, actually, a bit after the actual murder itself, that she did neglect him. So Jeremy did have essentially no love or support or any comfort in that house. He really didn't have parents. He kind of raised himself and tried to teach himself things. However, this did lead him to not know the difference between right and wrong. He would see his father being violent, and he would reflect that behavior. He'd be violent to other kids in school, and he'd get told off for it. But his dad was never told off, and this really confused his child brain. And although he should know that having a sexual relationship with a 12-year-old is wrong, I do think there are several reasons behind why he should do this. And I am not in any way trying to give excuses for this. I really do believe that he is completely and totally responsible for his actions. I'm just trying to give a bit of background as to why I think he did what he did. So, Jeremy has what we call an authoritarian personality. So, this is sort of when you have these characteristics that fit into this personality type. So his lack of parental support So he had no stable emotional support or love. His mother struggled with alcoholism and neglect due to her own abusive relationship, and she admitted she was never there for him. And without parents to provide a nurturing environment, Jeremy was left to raise himself. And children who lack secure attachments often developed a need for control and authority as a way of compensating for the chaos in their upbringing. And that kind of ties back into what I was saying about how Jeremy never essentially grew up and was kind of vicariously, well, not vicariously, but he was sort of trying to compensate for the life he never had as a teenager by living that life out as a grown adult. And in his case, he saw power and dominance as a means of feeling secure, like his father. And he demonstrated this dominance in the friend group and how the others sought his approval, as well as the great control he had over Jasmine. And another, I think, factor that contributed to him having this authoritarian personality was that his father was extremely abusive and exposed Jeremy to violence at a very young age, where the brain is still developing. He is still deciding, or he's still like learning the kind of environment that the world was, and being exposed to so much violence, it really does impact how you think and how your brain processes information. And he witnessed his father's aggression and learned to mimic those behaviors. And since his father was never held accountable for his actions, Jeremy internalized the idea that aggression and control were acceptable ways to interact with others. And he saw violence as a way to assert dominance, which can be a core trait of an authoritarian personality, and came to believe that power and aggression went unchallenged if one had enough authority. Now, Jeremy did struggle with mental health. He had depression and anxiety, as he began experiencing intense feelings of depression and anxiety by age 13, and abuse and neglected home likely exacerbated these feelings, which resulted in distorted thinking, feelings of worthlessness, and a sense of alienation. And these emotions may have led to extreme coping mechanisms, which included his self-harm and violent fantasies that were kind of played out through his relationship with Jasmine. So his self-harming was a way to cope with the overwhelming and uncontrollable emotions, which allowed Jeremy to exert some control over his emotional turmoil and express his inner pain. This links back to a lack of emotional regulation during an unstable point of his life, where he didn't have a stable support system in his upbringing, which contributes to his later intense anger and violent thoughts. Now, he was diagnosed with ADHD at age 13, which adds complexity to his mental health issues, as ADHD often involves problems with impulse control, attention, hyperactivity, and this increased difficulty in managing anxiety and depression can lead to risky behaviors. And the early drug use also very likely exacerbated these impulse decisions and poor judgment. Like the daily marijuana use at a young age, continuing on for another 10 years, did likely impact his brain development, as adolescent marijuana use can interfere with the areas responsible for decision making and emotional regulation. So early cannabis use increases risks of mental health disorders, which probably did contribute to his development of depression and anxiety. And of course, smoking weed probably worsened his depressive feelings and reduced his motivation and impaired his clear thinking. So that is all I have to say about the criminal psychology aspect about this.
So guys, that was the case basically.
Yeah.
We are going to be trying to put out an episode at least once a month.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard because we are in our A-levels.
And we've just started, so we're still kind of getting used to the course and the workload.
Yeah, and obviously it takes a long time to research such lengthy cases, make sure everything's accurate, look at the law.
Find time to record, edits.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So it is difficult, but we will try because we do have a passion for this.
Yeah, and we really do want to make these episodes. We have a lot of fun putting them together.
100%. So that is a wrap on episode 1, and we will see you guys next time for episode 2.
Yes. Stay tuned, and do follow our Instagram at Law and Disorder by TZ. Yeah. It is the same as our Spotify handle. So if you follow us on Instagram, you'll get more updates on when episodes are coming out. So yeah. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.